A plane crashing on a remote island, leaving its few survivors deserted, forced to fight nature and man alike in order to simply survive. It's a tale as old as time, assuming time began at roughly the same point as planes, and from the outside that may appear to be what the 2004 TV show Lost was about. But no, you sickly fool, it was actually... Well, yeah, it was actually about a plane crash, but that's a loaded question. The show was enormous, having, at the time, a cultural impact unlike almost anything else on TV, which is especially notable as, in a time dominated by grounded crime dramas and light-hearted half-comedies, Lost was an often quite creepy, esoteric, and non-linear thriller entity, these being properties of media often relegated to cult status, not mainstream appeal. And weirdly, when people discuss the pantheon of major TV dramas from the 2000s, they often omit it. You'll hear a lot about the likes of The Sopranos, The Wire, and Breaking Bad, despite Lost consistently outperforming all of these in viewing figures, often combined, while almost always having comparable or sometimes superior critical ratings too. One of the only things that Lost was consistently competing against in terms of pure views was, hilariously, House MD, another show where the main character was a troubled doctor. The difference there being that if Gregory House was in the sci-fi thriller world of Lost, he'd thrive. If Jack Shephard was in the playful drama of House MD, he'd crumble. So why is it that Lost is so often forgotten? I don't know. That's not what this video is about, because today I'm talking about the 2008 tie-in video game Lost Via Domus, which is Latin for lost by way of Domus. Because yeah, in the 2000s, everything had a video game adaptation. And like most of those other adaptations, this one wasn't very good. In this game, we take the role of photographer and journalist Elliott Maslow, a man that somehow looks like every other game protagonist of that era, and a man who was one of the unfortunate passengers of Oceanic Airlines Flight 815, a plane set to fly from Sydney to Los Angeles, but instead, sort of didn't. We awake in the jungle, having somehow survived the crash, and we stumble around. Something I immediately appreciated is that the game doesn't shy away from the darker aspects of the show. One of the first things you see is a mangled body that had fallen from the plane and is now caught up in some vines. It's quite grisly. It's just a shame that it glows like an interactable if you get too close. One of the main selling points of this game is that you can interact with the show's characters. The first one you meet here is Kate, played in the show by Evangeline Lilly, played here by some kind of folkloric mimic. Just by looking at her, we can notice that there's a stark difference between the characters who were scanned from real people and the characters who were built from the ground up for this game. Because the original characters look kind of okay, a little dated, but ultimately fine, whereas many of the scanned characters do not. Jorge Garcia, who plays the incredible character of Hurley in the show, had this to say about his representation in the game. Yikes! I've played a few video games in my day, and I do enjoy the scary ones, but nothing in The Suffering or Doom 3 has scared me more than Hurley from Via Domus. Something else that's very notable about the characters in this game is that they're all so forward with information. In the show, it was almost a painful process trying to get anyone to open up about their troubled past. But not here. One of Hurley's big character points in the show is that he believes himself to be cursed. He doesn't tell people about that because he knows how it sounds, plus he's very superstitious about it. Actual years of character building go into reinforcing that specific point. In Via Domus, moments after the plane crashes, he just outright states it to Elliott.
I'm cursed, man. It's all my fault.
Sometimes it's not just the inner character thoughts that are expressed outright. Sometimes it's the themes of the show itself that are word for word explained to Elliott. An example is with the characters of Jack and Locke, who represent two drastically different viewpoints. One is a doctor. He's empirical, rational, and focused. The other is incredibly spiritual, talking of fate and destiny and seeking out the supernatural for answers. For any pathologic fans, Jack is very much the bachelor and Locke is very much...
He's a man of science. I'm a man of faith. Question is, what kind of man are you?
Yeah, cheers, John, I was getting to that. It could have saved a lot of production costs with that kind of writing. It's very concise. We, after running through the jungle, reach the show's opening set piece, the wreckage of Oceanic Flight 815's fuselage. Seeing people crying out for help, bodies strewn around and debris everywhere, we do what must be done. We pick up as many coconuts as we can and then die in an engine explosion. One of the people on the beach you may recognize is the character Michael, played by Harold Perrineau of From fame, a more recent show that's been loosely compared to Lost by some. We can ask him about coconuts.
Our plane just crashed and you're asking about coconuts.
In fact, we can ask everyone about coconuts.
Who cares about coconuts?
Not now.
I don't need a coconut right now.
Focus.
From this, we can see that Elliott is a sociopath. In the middle of this life or death crisis, all he can think to do is ask people who he is while showing them water bottles. Water bottles, which he notes as being useful for trading, by the way. What a sick fuck. The plane is still actively exploding, and he's considering the economy. We also meet Jack, who is the show's main character. And here, like in the show, Jack is the only character who can do anything productive on this island. He asks us to fix a fuel leak. I ask him about coconuts. A true meeting of the minds. On the way to fixing the fuel leak that could detonate this entire beach, Elliott stops to comment, and I quote, "I may have amnesia, but at least I can walk. This place would be a nightmare for a cripple." Unbelievable. Further proof that Elliott is an inherently unlikable bastard man. He does indeed have amnesia, and that's actually quite a fun way for the game to mimic a core aspect of the show. Flashbacks. Each episode of the show typically focuses on one single character within the larger events at play, and will intersperse the episode with flashbacks from their life before the plane crash. At least it starts as flashbacks, and then the show gets weird in later series. But it's a way to explore these characters' motivations and histories without interrupting the ongoing conflicts on the island with needless exposition. It's a wonderful format, and it's the backbone of the show's most emotionally affecting moments. And it's the one thing this game does quite well. The mix of Elliott's amnesia, his past as a photographer, and the cool mechanic of having to line up foggy memories into specific snapshots is, while clunky, actually a really novel way of emulating the format of the show. Unfortunately, unlike the show's flashbacks, which often make us grow closer to the characters despite their checkered pasts, Elliott's almost all make him out to be a massive prick. He has no redeeming qualities. Here's his entire story so I don't ever have to think about it again. He's got a girlfriend called Lisa, who's also a journalist. They break up. They both go after the same story, following a shady businessman who is suspected of creepy military-industrial complex stuff and human experimentation. Eventually, he and Lisa wind up in the same hotel as the creepy businessman and decide to work together once again to get the big scoop. A scary bodyguard blocks the way to the businessman, and both journalists try to get past him. Lisa tries to distract him, but fails. Elliott, on the other hand, tries the far more effective measure of saying this.
That woman over there? She's a journalist.
This leads to her almost immediately getting mafia-style executed in a quiet room while Elliott takes pictures of the whole affair.
Get him.
Yeah, this is our sympathetic hero, a guy who 100% knowingly doomed his ex-girlfriend to the fate of being shot in the head. You might think that the recollection of these memories in some way changes Elliott's ways. You'd mostly be wrong, though. Anyway, back to the island. We soon meet our main villain, another survivor from the crash, a man in an immaculate, somehow completely undamaged suit who beats the fuck out of us. Honestly, I don't blame him. Elliott is a worm. Quite a few times throughout the game, they try to edit Elliott into major events that occurred, or they just straight up steal plot points from other characters and say, well, actually, Elliott did it first. And it's so funny seeing Elliott interact with the main cast. He's like someone's self-insert character. He appears in random moments from the show, and he consistently sticks out like a sore thumb, looking baffled as not Dominic Monaghan speaks weakly about a monster in the jungle.
Monster!
Withered Charlie is not wrong here. There is a monster out in the jungle, and to learn more about it, let's head back in to meet it for ourselves.
Hey, son, over here. I'm over here at the banyan trees.
Yeah, cheers, John, I was getting to that. There's a giant, horrific smoke monster out in the jungle that terrorizes the survivors throughout the duration of the show. Shown here as a slightly smaller smoke monster that largely just inconveniences us. We can hide from it by leaping into these banyan trees, naturally, except for when Locke is already in them, in which case we can go and fuck ourselves apparently. The game doesn't really do the smoke monster justice. In the show, this thing is dread incarnate. The sound design for it alone is one of the most distressing things ever put to screen. It's a horrid mix of what I imagine dinosaurs, demons, and industrial accidents sound like. It's a cacophony of hissing serpents and mechanical stress underlined with some biblical horns. Nightmarish. Oh, here, the monster also just destroys our main antagonist, but a few short scenes after he's introduced. Fascinating. He appears later on unharmed, so who really knows or cares what's going on there? Unfortunately, while the jungle in the show is a great source of adventure and scale, here it's just a series of small and tedious mazes. Generally speaking, the game struggles to capture the scope of the island, which is of course just a sign of when the game came out, but it's still a real shame. The show made the island feel huge, helped of course by the fact that it was filmed mostly on location in Hawaii, famously a group of huge fuck-off jungle islands. As well as the jungle areas, we eventually come across some caves that we have to navigate, and the main mechanic here is light. It's dark, you do not like the dark, bats attack you. So you light a torch to get through, navigating Dark Souls 2 style pitfalls and seeing ominous sights like a dead polar bear. But let's ignore the concerns about invasive species like polar bears, smoke monsters, and ghosts, and instead let's talk about the real worry: the economy. In order to light your way through the caves, you need to buy torches by trading in coconuts, water bottles, and later on, canned goods and the like. A few characters trade with you, but the main and best one is a guy called Sawyer. He's truly one of the greatest characters in the show. He starts out as a real misanthrope and causes so many issues for literally everyone that encounters him, but as the show progresses, his arc is simply sublime. I wrote some notes the last time I watched the show, and here's one I wrote for the middle of Series 4. He's kinda like a redneck Leon Kennedy minus the skill, and I stand by that.
I don't know, but the plane breaks apart like a twig, and no one suspects the one Iraqi on board?
Oh dear. Oh, I don't think Leon would have said that. Unfortunately, at the stage we encounter him, he's still very much at the misanthrope point of his life, but trust me, he gets better. And for now, he'll gladly give us a lamp or a gun in exchange for fruits and candy bars. I'll talk about the gun later on. Sometimes when you're trading with someone, they really stare you down. I'm sorry, Harold Perrineau. Who hurt you? Another threat in the jungle are the Others, an ominously branded group of people who existed on the island long before we crashed there. And the first time we meet them very much looks like a "we saw you from across the bar and we dig your vibe" scenario, but thankfully we avoid their polycule by being knocked out. The number of times you get knocked out in this game is genuinely nuts. I counted at least 6 separate times. That cannot be good for Elliott. After we get knocked out by the Others, we just sort of carry on as usual, and we reach the area and the idea that got me hooked on the show to begin with. Yeah, when it was pitched to me by a friend, the talk of the smoke monster and the Others and the whole concept of survival in general was interesting to me, but one thing truly reeled me in. On this seemingly uncivilized island in the middle of nowhere, deep in the jungle where no one would ever look, the survivors find a hatch. A metal trapdoor buried in the dirt, and they have no idea who put it there or where it leads. A lot of fiction comes up with similarly foreboding scenarios that tend to ultimately disappoint when any kind of reveal comes along, but Lost sticks the landing like you wouldn't believe. The reveal is a bunker, styled in a mix of industrial concrete misery and the decorative trappings of the 1970s, with maps and secret messages scrawled on the walls, visible only through UV light. Its main feature, however, is a single computer in some grimy, withered TARDIS room. A computer that must have the code 4, 8, 15, 16, 23, 42 plugged into it every 108 minutes. And until we came along, it had been, for some time, manned by a single person. You might ask, why that code? Why every 108 minutes? What is this all for? What happens if the code isn't entered? Why is this hidden underground on this island specifically? Why is there a wall emitting an ominous hum and acting as a strong magnetic force? And what do you mean one person was entering this code every 108 minutes? That sounds like torture. Yeah, well, watch the show. Some of these questions even have answers. The bunker, known as the Swan Station, is one of many stations on the island that were started by a group called the Dharma Initiative, an esoteric scientific institution studying, well, all kinds of anomalies and fringe scientific theories. Think somewhere between the SCP Foundation, but before that was a thing, and Black Mesa from Half-Life. Interestingly, in Series 1, Episode 21, there are some guys in a flashback playing Half-Life 1. The Dharma Initiative is one of the best things in the show. There's such an ominous presence, helped by the fact that one of the only things they've left behind are these creepy, decayed instructional tapes, not that far off from the analog horror of the 2010s. As well as the Swan, the game lets us explore the Flame, a communication station, the Hydra, a zoology and animal experimentation station, and if you find certain secrets, you can also find the Staff, a medical station, and the Pearl, a monitoring station. These are absolutely the highlight of the game. They remind me tremendously of the science labs from the Stalker series of games, minus the threats. The Dharma Initiative have an attack shark. You don't get to spend much time in these places, but any time at all is a joy as a fan of the show. As the game struggles with depicting the scale of the island, there is a bit of an unfortunate reveal regarding the Swan Station, because Locke, and later other survivors, really put in a lot of effort into blowing this hatch open. Like, people suffered. Locke built a fucking trebuchet. Honestly, it was a Herculean effort all around. But if you walk like 10 seconds further away, you can find the second entrance to the Swan. Just 2 unlocked double doors that aren't hidden at all. Do you want to see the worst jump you've ever seen? Also around the time we get into the hatch, we meet this guy, Desmond. Let me tell you, he may be the single greatest character in the entire show. Don't get me wrong, there's a whole pantheon of excellent, tragic, or otherwise notable characters in here, but Desmond is on another level. He's introduced in the first episode of the second series, with a fucking thirst trap of him doing chores and working out with his top off. And that's because he's fucking Scottish, and we demand no less. He comes and goes after that like a stray cat, but, you know, everyone's favourite stray cat. Jack may be the main character, but not when Desmond is around. His centric episodes are far and away the best, and his story makes me weep. Series 4, Episode 5 of Lost, called The Constant, is one of the finest episodes of not only sci-fi or drama, but fiction at large ever made. And wonderfully, it can't be appreciated in a vacuum. You have to have watched basically the whole show beforehand to fully appreciate it. It's genuinely incredible. You don't know Yearning until you know Desmond. But yeah, this is his only appearance in the game, just squatting in some trees. He's allowed to be a bit weird. He was the guy pressing that button every 108 minutes. Give him a break. Listen, at this stage you may be thinking that this video is largely just an excuse for me to be able to talk about the show with this game in the background. Correct. The game does an odd thing where it tries to emulate the TV serial format by having a previously on section at the start of each chapter, where it just replays the game's events at a slightly lower resolution. They're unskippable, and the chapters are quite short, so in reality, you're quite frequently being forced to rewatch things you just did, but with some splash screens in between. I can see why they did this conceptually. I can't really see why they decided to keep it in the game though. And sometimes the previously on recap sections are straight up wrong. Like when I got knocked out by Saeed and Jack. I recall it being far bluer. I'd carry on explaining the plot of the game, but really, Elliott's whole deal from this point on is just running from place to place getting knocked out before appearing in some recognizable set piece from the show. We eventually stumble our way into our old nemesis again, shoot him dead, and make a deal with the others to sacrifice Jack in return for a way off the island. But we even fuck that up because we have a sudden change of heart and decide we don't want an innocent man to die, which is grossly out of character, I'd say. In this climactic showdown, we can just walk around freely while our friends are held at gunpoint. There's no time pressure whatsoever. And Elliott chooses the most logical route to solve this conundrum, shooting a load of dynamite point blank to take out absolutely everyone in the room. It's one of the best animated sequences ever. And yes, once again, it knocks him out. Elliott needs to donate his brain to science. Or maybe the church. The game ends with us fleeing the others as we go to hijack a boat and leave the island. It's meant to be a tense chase, but it's utterly undermined by the fact that Locke randomly appears, murks a guy, blows up an enemy boat with his mind, and in doing so, completely steals our thunder. Amazing. Then, perplexingly, the game decides to take the lore of the show into its own hands, because as we're escaping the island, we see the plane that we arrived on crashing once again. Then we wake up on the beach, as if it was a time loop. That's not what this show is about. I have no idea why they decided to make such a bold creative choice. That's not the only bit of lore they invented. The question of the island's mysterious electromagnetic properties is a big one in the show, and in the game they decide to simply make the explanation for it a big magnet, because no razor is sharper than Occam's. Remember that gun I mentioned? You're able to buy ammo for the gun throughout the game. I counted. You can purchase or find at least 12 magazines, each holding 15 bullets. 12 magazines is a little excessive, as you only ever use 4 bullets. You only ever use 4 bullets. 2 to stop men and 2 to blow up dynamite. That leaves us with a potential 176 bullet leeway, just in case you are worried about accuracy. I'm running out of time here, so let me end quickly. This game is not good, nor is it indicative of the quality of the show. It tries to compress dozens of hours of high-budget television into 6 or so hours of clunky coconut trading and jungle mazes, complete with baffling story choices and plainly untested gameplay. I forgot to mention, there's also pipe puzzles, but every game from this era had fucking pipe puzzles. However, it does successfully capture some of the mystery of the show, and that I can get behind. If you can see through the mediocrity of this game and feel any attraction towards the show itself, I cannot recommend it enough. I fully and wholly suggest you avoid any wiki pages, any summaries, any plot discussions, and anything else that may spoil the content of the show beyond what I've done here. Watching Lost blind for the first time is an experience I wish I could have again. Do not deprive yourself of that with the cruel, siren-like temptation of spoilers. I wish I could talk about the show more in depth on this channel, but I would likely get annihilated by copyright the second I showed any actual footage. Who knows, maybe I'll manage one day. It's likely my favorite show of all time, and captures an ominous, horror-adjacent atmosphere that is unlike anything else I have ever watched. If even one of you decides to watch it because of this video, I will have done my job. Or for any existing fans, if you decide to rewatch it, that'll make me happy too. As for one final note before I end, specific numbers hold a huge importance in the narrative of Lost. The infamous sequence of 4, 8, 15, 16, 23, 42 is a recurring motif. It's the numbers the character Hurley used to win the lottery. It's the number that needs to be entered into the computer in the Swan. The flight number was 815, and there are 1,000 other examples of these numbers appearing. They're everywhere. So how long do you reckon Elliott was on the island? 23 days? 42 days? Maybe the sum of all these numbers? 108 days? Well, according to the wiki, Elliott was on the island for 67 days. No comment. Hello, this is me in editing. I just noticed there's a really great part of the game I forgot to include anywhere, and there was nowhere really natural for me to fit it in, so I'll just show you it here. Elliott can just scream at a dog for like 30 seconds straight.
Here, boy. Hey, dog. Wait up. Slow down. Slow down. Wait up. Wait up. Here, boy. Slow down. Wait up.
Alright, I think you get it.
Hey,
Thanks for watching,
Slow down.
and I'll see you in another life, brother.
Slow down.